So now let's go to the next verse, Deuteronomy 28:68. Right, which these devils are trying to say, hey, that's not talking about being put on ships and coming over here to America. So let's get that Deuteronomy 28:68. Deuteronomy 28:68. Right, it says, "And the Lord thy power shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you." Now, with these devils and the monkey-fied ass niggas that follows this devil, no cap Mahone, right? Oh, that's not talking about coming into captivity here in America. Oh, that's not talking about that. Now, we went through with the situation dealing with Jeremiah. Let's get Jeremiah 27. Let's get Jeremiah 27 and read on down. Because we went into captivity, right? We went into captivity under the Babylonians, then it was the Persians. Then the Greeks took down the Persians, and then the Romans came up. But they're saying that when it talks about here going into Egypt, that you have to go back into Egypt again. Mind you, when Moses wrote this, we had came out of Egypt. The scripture said we're going to go into Egypt again, but this time with ships. We walked out of Egypt, right? And when Israel went into captivity under the Babylonians, they didn't go in no ship. Israel went down into Egypt willingly under Pharaoh Necho, thinking that they would have protection from Nebuchadnezzar II. Nebuchadnezzar went down there and grabbed Israel and dragged their ass to Babylon. It wasn't on no ship. They were dragged across land to Babylon, to the Babylonian captivity. That was the exile. After that happened, let's read Jeremiah 27, and then we'll go into it.
All right, Jeremiah 27:1. It says, "In the beginning of the reign of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, came this word unto Jeremiah from the Lord, saying, Thus saith the Lord to me, Make thee bonds and yokes, and put them upon thy neck."
Wait a minute. He said, Jeremiah, make bonds and make yokes. And put them bonds, that you put around your hand, those restraints, and yokes you put around your neck. So make thee bonds and yokes. Go ahead.
"And send them to the king of Edom, and to the king of Moab."
Right, and send them to the king of Edom, and send them to all the kings. In other words, make a bunch of bonds and make a bunch of yokes, and send them to the king of Edom, the king of Moab, the king of Ammon. Send it to all the different kings round about Israel. Go ahead. Go read on.
"And send them to the king of Edom, and to the king of Moab, and to the king of the Ammonites, and to the king of Tyrus, and the king of Zidon, by the hand of the messengers which came to Jerusalem unto Zedekiah king of Judah, and command them to say unto their masters, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, the power of Israel. Thus shall ye say unto your masters, I have made the earth, the man and the beast that are upon the ground, by my great power and by my outstretched arm, and have given it unto whom I see meet unto me. And now have I given all these lands into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon.
Right. So he told Jeremiah, make you yokes and make bonds and send them to all the different kings round about and tell them, I gave all of these lands to King Nebuchadnezzar. This is Nebuchadnezzar's time. So the Most High purposed Nebuchadnezzar to take over the entire known world at that time. And he told Jeremiah to send yokes to all the different kings and tell them, look, this word came from the Lord saying, look, I set Nebuchadnezzar up. Nebuchadnezzar is going to have all these lands. Now, later on in the book of Jeremiah, when you read on, Israel was like, oh, no, Jeremiah, we're not going for that. And in here, matter of fact, read down a little bit more in there.
Okay. Verse 6. And the beasts of the field have I given him also to serve him. Verse 7. And all nations shall serve him, and his son's son, until the very time of his land come. And then many nations and great kings shall serve themselves of him. And it shall come to pass that the nation and kingdom which will not serve the same Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, and that will not put their neck under the yoke of the king of Babylon.
Wait a minute. You had to put your neck under the yoke of the king of Babylon. Now, Jeremiah sent a yoke and bonds out to the kings because it symbolized you were going to be under the yoke of Nebuchadnezzar, meaning you were going to be under his rule. That was sent to them as a symbol saying, look, you're going to be under the yoke of this man Nebuchadnezzar. You're going to be under his rule. And anybody who would not be under the yoke of Nebuchadnezzar, go ahead.
Mm-hmm. That nation will I punish, save the Lord, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, with the sword and with the famine and with the pestilence until I have consumed them by his hand. Therefore, hearken not ye to your prophets, nor to your diviners, nor to your dreamers, nor to your enchanters, nor to your sorcerers, which spake unto you, saying, ye shall not serve the king of Babylon. For they prophesy a lie unto you.
Right. For they prophesy a lie unto you. You're going to have to serve the king of Babylon. So that was the Babylonian captivity. And what? They had to go under the yoke of Nebuchadnezzar. Now, after this happened, right, that started around 589 BC, when Nebuchadnezzar had finally seized Jerusalem, 589 to 587. Then they were dragged off into Babylon, right? But Israel, when you read on, they went down into Egypt under Pharaoh Necho, and then Nebuchadnezzar went down there and yanked their ass up out of there, and they were dragged into Babylon. Now, after the Babylonian captivity, you had King Cyrus of the Persians. Cyrus came on the scene around 539 BC. Matter of fact, could we get the book of Ezra in the Bible? Ezra 1, verses 1 to 4. And if we could get, if you give me Isaiah 45, verses 1 to 3. Okay. So now everybody had to be under the yoke of Nebuchadnezzar II. Then Nebuchadnezzar's time was up, and we had to go under who? Cyrus. And be under the Persians, and then it became the Medo-Persian Empire. And then after that, then came the time for Alexander. After Alexander came the time of the Roman Empire. But through all those captivities, we still knew that we were Israelites. Go ahead.
Isaiah 45 and 1, or you want Ezra first?
Give me Ezra.
You call it Ezra?
Can you hear me, Ayathan?
I'll grab it. What is it? Ezra?
The voice was off. He got it.
Yeah, I got it. So this is Ezra chapter 1, first verse.
Right. This right here is tedious. Going into this history and reading these different accounts is tedious. It's not like this is not, how would you say, the sexy part. Everybody,
you got to know it. That's how you piece everything together.
Right. You got to know it. You know what I'm saying? So Jake, this is what Jake should really be getting into, but Jake like that sexy stuff.
Yeah, well,
you know what I'm saying?
4:6. My people are
destroyed for lack of knowledge, right?
Go ahead. See that?
15 and 4. The things written aforetime was for our learning.
Yep.
So this is Ezra, first chapter, verse 1. It says, now in the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, that the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah might be fulfilled, the Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia, that he made a proclamation throughout all his kingdom, and put it also in writing, saying, thus saith King of Persia, Cyrus, king of Persia, the Lord power of heaven hath given me all the kingdoms of the earth, and he hath charged me to build him an house at Jerusalem, which is in Judah. Verse 3, who is there among you of all his people? His power be with him, and let him go up to Jerusalem, which is in Judah, and build the house of the Lord, power of Israel. He is the power, or he is the Most High, which is in Jerusalem. Verse 4, and whosoever remaineth in any place where he sojourneth, let the men of his place help him with silver, and with gold, and with goods, and with beasts, beside the free will offering for the house of the Most High that is in Jerusalem.
Right. So Cyrus came up and he got power over Nebuchadnezzar because the Most High set him up. And then Cyrus made it so that way we could what? Rebuild the temple. So now the temple was being rebuilt. So now under the Persians, we still knew that we were Israel. As a matter of fact, we were able to build the temple. Now Deuteronomy 28:68 says, "Thou shalt see it no more again," which is what our homeland. Well, wait a minute. After the Babylonian captivity, we seen our homeland again. We went back into our homeland and built it back up. And during the Babylonian captivity, we still knew that we were Israelites.
Yep.
Go ahead. Now, you finished that right there?
Damn, it's like I lost the verse I was in. I was in verse 4.
Verse 4 was the last verse. That's all I wanted.
Okay.
Yeah, so now we get Isaiah, because it's something in Isaiah 44, but Isaiah 45, 1 and 3 pretty much caps it off.
Hey, but the elder said a heavy thing. He said this is the first captivity. All those captivities back then, we always knew we were Israelites.
Right.
And the heathen know that we would pray to the Lord,
Mm-hmm.
have mercy and deliver us.
Right.
That's why when the prophecy, or when the prophetic time of Psalm 83, where they said, let them cut us off from being Israel.
To cut us off from being a nation. That happened over here.
Cut.
That didn't happen over there. That didn't happen. Oh, hell, during the time of Judges, we still knew we were Israelites. Or we went under 18 different nations, and we still knew we were Israelites. Then after the time of Judges, then you had the time of King Saul, and then King David. Then came King Solomon. Then after the kingdom, after the death of Solomon, the kingdom, you had his son. I believe his son was Jeroboam. Rehoboam, I believe, was the Ephraimite king. The kingdom was split. You had the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. This was after the death of Solomon. The northern kingdom went under the Assyrians. The southern kingdom went under the Babylonians. The southern kingdom also went after Nebuchadnezzar's time was done. They went into captivity under the Persians, starting with King Cyrus. Go ahead. Isaiah 45.
All right, Isaiah 45 and 1. Thus saith the Lord to his anointed, to Cyrus' right hand.
He said to his anointed, which was who? Cyrus, his right hand. Go ahead.
To Cyrus, whose right hand I have holden, to subdue nations before him. I will loose the loins of kings to open before him the two levied gates, and the gates shall not be shut. I will go before thee and make the crooked places straight. I will break in pieces the gates of brass and cut asunder the bars of iron. I will give thee treasures of darkness and hidden riches of secret places.
Now he told Cyrus this. He said, Cyrus is my right hand. So he set Cyrus up after Nebuchadnezzar, and Cyrus came up, and now Cyrus is the king. Cyrus got the power now. Is there more?
God, that thou mayest know that I, the Lord, which called thee by name, am the power of Israel.
Right, am the power of Israel. But he was with Cyrus. He says Cyrus was his right hand at that time. So he was with King Cyrus to take down the Babylonians. And then Cyrus made it so that way we were able to rebuild the temple. He let the exiles that were in Babylon come back to Jerusalem and rebuild the temple with Zerubbabel and Joshua. Right? But now Deuteronomy 28:68 says, and the Lord thy power shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships by the way whereof I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. We shall be brought into Egypt again with ships this time. Egypt meaning bondage. Now, what these devils are trying to say that, see, that's not talking about. That means you had to go back into Egypt again, but this time on ships. And then you are going to be taken away, and then you're going to offer yourselves to be sold. What kind of bullshit is that? It makes no damn sense at all. But now after the Persians came who? The Greeks. So let's get First Maccabees 1 and 1 down to 9. So now the Greeks come up. Alexander the Greek has smitten Darius, king of the Persians and the Medes, and now this was Alexander's time. This was the time of the Greek rule.
I got a quick
Go ahead, brother.
for you. This is Psalms. I go right to the point. The whole chapter is that I'll go right to the point. Psalm 75:6. It says, "For promotion cometh neither from the east, nor from the west, nor from the south. But the Most High is the judge. He putteth down one and setteth up another."
Right. He putteth down one and setteth up another. He putteth down one and he sets up another. Now the next one to be set up is Alexander the Great. Go ahead.
That was it on that.
Mm-hmm. First Maccabees.
Okay. What you call Slacker? What you call for in First Maccabees?
First Maccabees 1:1. We're gonna read that on down. So
All right.
now it's Alexander's time. And like I was saying earlier, when you go into the history of the Josephus, Alexander didn't come at us crazy. It wasn't until after him that the crazy shit started, which was after the death of Alexander the Great. Alexander was cool with us. Of course, yeah, he's the devil that the Bible speaks of, but he didn't come at us crazy when you read in the history. This was after his death is when really the shit hit the fan.
Yep. It says this is First Maccabees 1:1. And it happened that after Alexander, son of Philip, the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Shittim, had smitten Darius, king of Persians and Medes, that he reigned in his stead the first over Greece, and made many wars and won many strongholds and slew the kings of the earth.
Right. He made many wars and with many strongholds, and he slew the kings of the earth. Go ahead.
And went through the ends of the earth and took spoils of many nations, insomuch that the earth was quiet before him.
Right. Nobody had an answer for him. Nobody could stand up to Alexander. Go ahead.
Whereupon he was exalted and his heart was lifted up. And he gathered a mighty strong host and ruled over countries and nations and kings who became tributaries unto him. And after these things he fell sick and perceived that he should die.
Right. Now it said he had many nations as tributaries unto him. We didn't have to pay tribute to Alexander the Greek. Again, it's in the Josephus. Because time is of the essence right now. It's in the Josephus. All you got to do is go to let me see. I'll tell you where to go where you can read the account. All you got to do is go to Antiquity of the Jews. You go to Antiquity of the Jews, and you go to Antiquity of the Jews, book 11, and the very last chapter in the last paragraph. It gives you everything you need to know about how Alexander dealt with us and the deal that he cut with the Jews. I'm not going to read it, but you can go read it for yourselves. And if you out there, go read it for yourselves. Antiquity of the Jews, book 11, and you go to the very last two paragraphs of the last chapter, and it's all right there. All right, so now we're going to go back here to Deuteronomy. Go ahead, brother.
Okay, so verse 5. After these things he fell sick and perceived that he should die. Wherefore he called his servants, such as were honorable, and had been brought up with him from his youth, and parted his kingdom among them while he was yet alive. So Alexander reigned 12 years, and then he died. And his servants bare rule every one in his place. And after his death, they all put crowns upon themselves. So did their sons after them many years. And evils were multiplied in the earth. And there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes.
Right, that was Antiochus the Fourth. He was of the Seleucid line. He was out of the Seleucid line, and his name was Antiochus the Fourth. Seleucus was known as the king of the north. He had Syria and Syria and Asia Minor. He had those lands under him, and then Ptolemy was the king of the south. Ptolemy had Egypt, and in the middle of Ptolemy and Seleucus, the Seleucid Empire was who? Us, the Israelites. Judah, Benjamin, and Levi was smack dead in the middle of what became later on known as the Syrian Wars, and we was in between Ptolemy and Seleucus, going against each other, vying for power to take each other's lands over. After the death of Alexander, go ahead.
And there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes, son of Antiochus, a king who had been in hostage at Rome. And he reigned in the 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks. In those days went there out of Israel wicked men, who excuse me, who
Right. In
persuaded
those days went out of Israel wicked men who what? They persuaded Israel to go follow after the custom of the heathen. So I don't understand what you simple ass monkey minded Christians out there. Well, really, I do understand. And you wacky tacky Christians and you damn devils out there. This is when Israelites became Greeks. They became Hellenized. That's why in Galatians the 3rd chapter it says there's no difference between Jew nor Greek, because these Jews became Greeks at this time right here. This is Antiochus IV, but before Antiochus IV, you had Israelites that under Ptolemy, under the first Ptolemy Soter, that were brought into Jerusalem by Ptolemy Soter and into Egypt, and they were put in captivity in Egypt under Ptolemy Soter. Then his son, Ptolemy Philadelphus, he freed those Israelites who his father had brought and put and made captive there in Egypt, and basically made them be Greeks. And he gave them Greek citizenship. And then he commanded that the Jews' records be translated into the Greek. And that's when the Septuagint came about. That was under the son of Ptolemy Soter, who was Ptolemy Philadelphus. Right? As a matter of fact, I got it right here. Now, this is book 12, Antiquity of the Jews, book 12, chapter 2. It says how Ptolemy Philadelphus procured the laws of the Jews to be translated into the Greek tongue and set many captives free and dedicated many gifts to the Most High. It says, when Alexander had reigned 12 years, and after him Ptolemy Soter 40 years, Philadelphus then took the kingdom of Egypt and held it 40 years with one. He procured the law to be interpreted and set free those that were come from Jerusalem into Egypt and were in slavery there, who were 120,000, because his father, Ptolemy Soter, took 120,000 Jews and brought them into Egypt into captivity. Now, notice they didn't go on no ship, because where Egypt is at, you just walk right there through the land of Judah. And he grabbed them and brought them down into Egypt, into captivity. Right? So his father did that, but then 40 years later, he became the ruler. And what he did was he freed those Jakes and gave them Greek citizenship. So in Galatians, it says there's no difference between Jew nor Greek. Why? Because the Greek that it was talking about were those Greek Israelites. They were Hellenized. Now, you had a group of Israelites before this was done by Ptolemy Soter. When Alexander came to Jerusalem, like I said, go back and read the history. Alexander sat down with the high priest and said, look, any of the Jews who join my army in my war campaigns, they do not have to bow down and serve any Greek gods. You do not have to pay no tribute to me. And those soldiers can freely worship Yahweh freely. They don't have to become Greeks. So you had a contingency of Jakes before Ptolemy Soter did what he did that was already spread out in the Greek Empire, but they still knew that they were Israel. Now, this next group, they were dragged by Ptolemy Soter there and like, nah, you're going to do the Greek thing.
Was it Antiochus? He said,
and then Antiochus came later. Yeah. He came later after this.
Yep, it said, let us all become one people.
Right. And then it, like you were reading about Antiochus IV. So I just went back to this. So now let's go back and read about a little bit more Maccabees about Antiochus.
Verse 11, it says, in those days went there out of Israel wicked men who persuaded many, saying, let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about. For since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow. So this device pleased them well.
Right. So this device pleased them well. So they were like, nah, we're just going to, we're going to follow these Greek gods and do the great thing. Because since we departed, we've had much sorrow. Go ahead.
Yep. Then certain other people were so forward herein that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinances of the heathen. Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
So they went after the way of the heathen. Now, doesn't it say, wasn't it in Corinthians 12? Remember in times past? Could you get that? I think it's 1 Corinthians 12 and 1. In time past, where you were carried away to these Gentiles, carried away to these dumb idols. That's the time past right there. Remember in times past where you were Gentiles carried away to these dumb idols as you were led. You reading it right there.
I got it.
Go ahead, brother.
This is 1 Corinthians 12 and 1. It says, "Now concerning spiritual gifts, brethren, I would not have you ignorant. Ye know that ye were Gentiles, carried away unto these dumb idols, even as ye were led."
Didn't we just read that? What Antiochus the Fourth did?
Mm-hmm.
Didn't we just read that? Carried away to these dumb idols as you were led. We read about before Antiochus, you had Ptolemy Soter, who took 120,000 Jews and brought them into Egypt and made them do the Greek thing. Then Antiochus came and he just went on a whole nother level with it. Right? Now, the reason why I'm reading this for Deuteronomy 28:68, because I'm setting something up. Now, we read about that with the Greeks. I'm not going to read too much more into it. Now, I just want to get to it because now the whole thing about going into Egypt on ships and all that, this devil, he tried to pull a fast one. But see, it seems, it's quite, going into the history is quite tedious, right? So like I said, this ain't the sexy part right here. This is the part where you got to be scholarly. So now I'm going to pull up this video with this well, it is. It is with this this devil right here. I'm going to pull this up with him with this, this, I want to say something else. I'll just say this devil, right? And let me go back over here. Right? I'm going to pull this up and I want to play this. I want to show something.
Number 2, 3rd Maccabees.
Now, this dude talks about 3rd Maccabees. There ain't no 3rd Maccabees in the Apocrypha. It's only 1st and 2nd Maccabees. This motherfucker's pulling a fast one. There is no, because I was searching through. I'm like, wait a minute, this what shit he reading here? That's not in the Apocrypha. But now he's pulling up something called 3rd Maccabees. Now I'm gonna let him say his little spiel, because this is where he got a lot of people. That's why I was reading about thou shalt see it no more again. Thou shalt go into Egypt again with ships. Now watch this shit he pulls. Listen to this. This is at about this is about almost a 7-minute mark of this video right here on his channel. It's called Destroying the Abuse of Deuteronomy 28 Forever. Right?
Canonical, but there's some historical elements in him.
He said it's not canon.
When were the Israelites ever
canonical.
put into slavery in Egypt?
Watch this. Listen.
3rd Maccabees. This is circa 217 BC.
Right.
Can I read 3rd Maccabees to you? "For in such manner, with harshness and pitiless heart, were they sent away with one accord by the generals in the cities, that at their sight of their unusual sufferings, even some of their enemies with common pity before their eyes, remembering the uncertain issue of life, wept at their hapless departure. For there was carried away a multitude of old men, covered with their wealth of gray hairs, forcing to a swift journey, with feet bent and sluggish from old age, under the violence of their rough driving, which knew no shame." Describing what happened to the Jews under a certain Greek ruler, specifically a man named Ptolemy the Fourth Philopator.
Right. So let's listen.
3rd Maccabees, chapter 4, verse 7. "And as prisoners exposed to public gaze, they were dragged along with violence until they were embarked on board." Okay. In ships. Okay. I'm adding the in ships. It doesn't say that, but I'm saying, understand, on board is saying they're in ships. Verse 8. "And their consorts with ropes on their necks instead of garlands, in the flower of their youthful age, spent the remainder of the days of their marriage feast in dirges instead of mirth and youthful ease, seeing the grave already yawning at their feet. And they were brought on board, driven like wild beasts under the constraint of iron bonds. Right. Some were fastened by the neck to the benches of the ships. Others had their feet secured in the strongest fetters. And further, they were shut off from the light by the thick planks above, that in entire darkness they might be treated as traitors throughout the whole voyage." But you may say, yeah, but what about Egypt? Verse 11. "When they had been brought to the place called Shedia, and the voyage was completed as determined by the king, he ordered them to be imprisoned in the hippodrome that was before the city, a place of immense circuit and very suitable for making them a gazing stock to all who entered the city, and to those of the inhabitants who went into the country to sojourn, so they might neither communicate with his army," blah, blah, blah. Where's Shedia? It's a town of Lower Egypt near Alexandria.
It's a town of Lower Egypt.
Verse 14,
yeah.
and he commanded that the whole race should be registered by name, not for the wearisome service of labor, which was briefly described before. So it's saying this is for a different purpose, but they just were in service. They were just laboring. Do you see that? But that they should be tortured with the torments to which he had sentenced them. Verse 17, but after the aforesaid space of time, the scribes reported to the king that they were no longer able to continue the registration of the Jews on account of the incalculable number. Although the greater number of them were still in the country, some still remaining in their homes and others on the journey, it was impossible for all the generals in Egypt. Now,
so that's his claim to fame there. See, they were brought in chains on ships into Egypt, right? But now, I'm going to bust this shit wide open. Now, let's say that this is true. But let's humor this situation and say, okay, this is true, right? If that's the case, the scriptures say, thou shalt see it, hold on, let me go to Deuteronomy 28.
See it no more again.
It says, and the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again, and there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy thee. Now, it said, ye shall not see it again, which is what? Our homeland. Now, if that is true, the Israelites that went into Egypt under the Greek occupation, what the fuck was Acts the 2nd chapter about? Israelites coming from what? Greek lands back to Jerusalem to what? Keep the feast. What about in Acts the 13th chapter where you had the contingency with Paul and them with the circumcision that were pissed off at them for bringing men into the temple uncircumcised, which were those Greek Israelites? Wait a minute. So that means they what? That was happening in Jerusalem. So those Gentiles or Greek Israelites, they seen the land again, didn't they? The scriptures say, thou shalt what? Hold up. The scriptures say, Deuteronomy 28, by the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. So it says when we go into Egypt this time, we're not going to see what? Our land again, our homeland again. Wait a minute. What was the controversy that was going on in the book of Acts? It was the Greek Israelites that were coming. They were uncircumcised. They were wild. So they were following them. Wait a minute. Paul wrote to the Corinthians, Ephesians, Thessalonica. Those were all Greek Israelites.
You had, and then the ones who took on the waves, like today's term,
Mm-hmm.
Dennis Rodman, D. Wade, Young Thug.
Right. You had niggas like that was being brought back into the fold. So they had to start slow because they lost it. So they were getting it back. Paul didn't impose circumcision on them and things. He told them, look, start with this. Okay, don't eat pork, don't this, don't that. Then later on, they build them up some now. Okay, now you got to get circumcised. They were mad because they said, you bringing men uncircumcised into the temple. So wait a minute, those Greek Israelites, what was Acts the 2nd chapter about? Them Greek Israelites came back to the land. And the Jews in Jerusalem, they wrote them off and they were like, oh, hell no. They doing it to this day right now.
Yep.
Right? But the scriptures say, thou shalt see it no more again, which is what? Our homeland, Jerusalem. So now this dude, he said, oh, I read out the book of 3rd Maccabees. When you go into the Apocrypha, 1st and 2nd Maccabees. Now, check this. This is called the New World Encyclopedia, 3rd Maccabees. Okay, let me do this. What I had done said Control and plus, right? Okay. Yeah. That's bring it back one. It says the book of 3rd Maccabees is found in most Orthodox Bibles as part of the Deuterocanonical books, but Protestants, Catholics, and Jews regard it as apocryphal. It tells the story of the persecution of the Jews of Alexandria and Egypt under Ptolemy IV Philopator, 222 to 205 BC. Despite its title, the book has almost nothing to do with the Maccabees or their revolt against the Greek Empire as described in 1st and 2nd Maccabees. So what the fuck did he pull the fucking fast one? Now, if you go into the Jewish Encyclopedia, they said that, look, some few little things that are mentioned in 3rd Maccabees is mentioned in Josephus. But what he read there, that's not mentioned in there. Now I'm gonna come back to this.
That's the devil for you.
So what? This motherfucker tried to pull a fast one. That's why I was going through the history and reading through the history to get to this point.
Hey, but then you want to go on that level just to chop them up. The Lord said his people will be poor in the worst condition. When
and that's in Deuteronomy 28.
But even when the Lord make his second coming,
right.
So that adds out the so-called Jew.
That's right.
Because they own the world.
They own everything.
The media, right now, the Wi-Fi,
Hollywood,
using everything. They own everything.
They own everything.
The Lord said, "Woe to them who are rich, for ye have received your consolation."
Right. Now, when you go into like Encyclopedia Britannica here, or even the let me see. This is Ptolemy the Fourth, which is Philopator. Let me blow this up because it's hard to read this shit. Right. This is in the Jewish Encyclopedia. It says he was the king of Egypt from 222 to 205, hero of the servants described in Daniel's. The passage in question refers to battles between him and Antiochus the Great, more especially the decisive battle of Raphia in 217 BC, in which Ptolemy won a brilliant victory, and by that very fact showed himself to be a much more able ruler than is commonly supposed. 2 episodes in the Battle of Raphia are mentioned in 3rd Maccabees also, how a certain Theodotus, conducted by a Jew called Dositheus, son of Dermilus, tries to murder Ptolemy in his sleep, but falls in his purpose. How Arsenal, sister of the Egyptian king, incites the troops to fight bravely. 3rd Maccabees 1. Both accounts originate with Polybius and hence are historical. Accordingly, the rest of the story narrated in 3rd Maccabees cannot be pure invention. They're saying here that some of the stuff in 3rd Maccabees is actually somebody didn't lie about it. Some of it is true, but not all of it is. Right. That's what they're saying here in the Jewish Encyclopedia. Then they said both accounts originate, and they're telling you where it originated. Accordingly, the rest of the story narrated in 3rd Maccabees cannot be pure invention, although there are absurd details in it. And that was one of the absurd details we read. Is what this dude tried to pull a fucking fast one. It says there are absurd details in it, which are doubtless due to the fact that the author is trying to glorify a great miracle. The author relates that after the Battle of Raphia, Ptolemy Philopator visited Jerusalem and declared that he would enter the temple by divine interposition. However, he fell to the ground stunned when he had returned to Alexandria. He thought of revenge and caused all the Jews of Alexandria and Egypt to be bound and dragged into the arena to be trampled by his elephants, but the beasts threw themselves upon the king's troops instead. The Jews celebrated their escape by an annual feast day. Now, it says he was supposed to come into Jerusalem. It didn't say nothing about him taking the Jews out of Jerusalem and putting chains on them and dragging them. He went back to Alexandria, Egypt, and was torturing the Alexandrian Jews. Right? But now let's go back here to what it says here about 3rd Maccabees. In the this is called the New World Encyclopedia. Despite its title, the book has almost nothing to do with Maccabees or their revolt against the Greek Empire as described in 1st and 2nd Maccabees. However, it shares with the other Maccabean books a concern with issues such as the struggle of the Jews against a Gentile ruler who attempts to force them to accept Greek traditions. And it appears to borrow from 2nd Maccabees the theme of a miraculous intervention preventing a Gentile king from entering the temple of Jerusalem. Unlike the other Maccabean works, however, most of the book takes place in Africa. It also concludes with a spectacular, miraculous intervention by God to save his people from mass martyrdom by causing the Greek ruler to change his attitude, while in 1st and 2nd Maccabees, deliverance comes through God's support of the Maccabean military. See? Bullshit.
Yep.
He tried to pull a fast one.
Of course.
This motherfucker tried to pull a fast one. Go ahead.
If you knew God hates you and your people, it's coming back to destroy you. Well, of course they're gonna try to pull a fast one. And remember, this kingdom was built off lies. Now the Lord said the truth shall set you free, and is dismantling this whole system.
That's right.
Remember, we were taught that we was all Africans.
Right.
You know, taught that the Puerto Ricans, the Native Americans, they come from Asia. You know, it's lie upon lie.
Lie upon lie upon lie. And they're being caught. Those lies they've been caught. And we've been bringing out the information. Now they're throwing out the disinformation. And the disinformation is just going to sway off who the Lord don't want. Because the Lord said the deceiver and the deceived are his. There's Israelites out there that the Lord wants you to purposely be deceived. He don't want you to find your way here.
Exactly. We talked about it earlier.
Right. He don't want you to find your way here. Go ahead, I think you have something to say?
Yeah, real quick. This is from Wikipedia. Now, this is in about...
put it up on a big screen. Can you put it up on the screen? Can you share it on the big screen?
Yeah, hold on.
There you go.
Okay. Hold on.
Yeah, the water blow up thing. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. This is regarding Third Maccabees, right? Third Maccabees.
Yep.
And here, I'll just start up here. It said about the history, or in other words, authenticity. The contents of the book have a legendary character, and it is not generally considered reliable as history. It is closer to a romance or historical novel, similar to the Book of Judith or Greek romances. Some parts of the story, such as the names of the Jews taking up all the paper in Egypt, or the king granting the Jews a license to murder apostates, are clearly fictional. Additionally, the Book of Daniel, generally agreed to have been written around 165 BC, does not mention any such attack by the Ptolemies. Blah, blah, blah. Just read down to the part where I wanted to read. It said German historians Emil Schwerer called the book almost entirely fictitious and a work of the poorest sort. That said, while many elements of the story are dubious, scholars accept that memories of a genuine persecution might be being described in Third Maccabees if distorted. Then it goes on, but this is the main point right here. That there's a lot of scholars out there that say that the book is BS.
There you go. So he tried to pull a fast one.
Yeah.
See, so this devil, he actually pulled it. But you got caught.
Believeth every word. Right?
Go ahead. What was that, brother?
The simple believeth every word.
Right.
Yep.
See, he pulled the fast one, but motherfucker, you got caught.
And if you listen to everything from the apostles, the elders on down, everybody who truly got the spirit of Yahweh Shemel Shai, like the scripture said, we have an unction to know all things. The famines that's coming, the race wars, even the system that's being collapsed as we speak.
Mm-hmm.
The Spirit of the Lord had us prophesy that in bringing out the scriptures from day one.
That's right.
It hasn't changed to the chariots, the so-called UFOs. You still got so-called Bible scholars that went to their theologians schools or seminary schools that can't figure it out.
Right.
And it's like breathing and walking to us.
Right.
The Spirit of the Lord. It's a gift.
Right. It's a gift. It's like Elder Bishop Anab said, it's like breathing and walking to us. So we knocked that shit down. Now, going back to Deuteronomy 28 and 68, I'm going to read it again. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships by the way whereof I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. Right? Meaning buy you, meaning redeem you. The term, the word that's there, we're going to get that in the blue letter. The word that's there ultimately means to be redeemed. In other words, that's why Yahweh Shai is what? Our Redeemer. We weren't able to be redeemed since that happened. We still in captivity. We're waiting for the Redeemer to get us up out of here. We're waiting for redemption. No man shall buy you, meaning no man shall redeem thee. Not that you're going to try to offer yourself up to be a slave, but nobody's going to take your services. I mean, what a crock of shit. But now Deuteronomy 28 and 68. Now you also had in 70 AD. Let me see if I can in 70 AD, right, when the Romans, they besieged Jerusalem and they were, burning the city down, and we were going through the famine and all that there in the city of Jerusalem, and all that was taking place right there in 70 AD. Now, what happened afterward is there's an account here with Rudolph R. Windsor, right, where he says in here, in the book of Babylon and Timbuktu, Salakia, let me get this over here. Salakia, pull that down. Right. So he says here in Babylon and Timbuktu, I just want to pull this point out. Page 84. In the year 65 BC, the Roman armies under General Pompey captured Jerusalem. In 70 AD, General Vespasian and his son Titus put an end to the Jewish state. With great slaughter during the period of the military governors of Palestine, many outrages and atrocities were committed against the residue of the people. During the period from Pompey to Julius, it has been estimated that over 1 million Jews fled into Africa, fleeing from Roman persecution and slavery. The slave markets were full of black Jewish slaves. Now, the slave markets is speaking about is the slave markets in Rome. The slave markets in Rome was full of black Jewish slaves, because after you had 1 million Jakes that ran into Africa, the ones that didn't die in the siege, that got caught, they were taken and they were put on the ship, and they were taken and brought to Rome and sold in the city of Rome. And they were sold to be used to fight in the arena, to fight against lions and tigers and bears. Then you had some that were sent down to Carthage to work in the plantations that were on Carthage, because Rome couldn't feed itself. So after they brought down Carthage in 146 BC, and they burnt the capital city down to the ground, they kept it as an agricultural outpost. Then you had Jakes that were sent there to Carthage, which is North Africa, which is Italy, the boot. You go right across the water, you in Carthage. That's how close it is in the Mediterranean. Jakes had to go there, right? So let me see if I can want to see if I can pull this up right here. So here we go here. This is an icon of the Roman slave market, and you see these Jakes got chains on them, right? You see this? If you any of you out there can see on the screen, you see this Jake? You see them walking with the lion, and these Jakes are on the camel, they chained up. They're walking, he has a chain on him here, he's chained behind his back, and they're being what? Led into the slave markets in Rome. And look at that lion right there, because they're going to be fighting him. Let me see if I go back this way. This is that same picture, but this is the other side of the picture. Notice you see the Jakes up here. This Jake, he's chained up, and they're being what? There's tigers right there. They're being brought to the Roman markets to be sold. Let me go back over to this image right here. This is the same image, but this is the other side of that image. Remember, you see this same guy chained up on the other side over here? Look, see him? He's chained. The other picture, this is the same guy with the chain, but you don't see the other people there. So this was Jake being sold in the slave markets in Rome as slaves in Rome. Now I'm going to read another little piece out of this book called it's called Ancient Civilization by the author of this book is a man named let me see if I can scroll this out of here like this. Here we go. Now out of this book is called Ancient Civilizations by a man named Hutton Weber, right? And it says here on page 422. It says, during Vespasian's reign, a Jewish revolt was crushed, and Jerusalem, after a terrible siege of 6 months, was captured by the emperor's son Titus. It is said that 1 million Jews perished during the siege, and that 100,000 were sold into slavery in Rome. They were sold into slavery in Rome, right? And we're looking at images of that. And then them same jakes, let me pull out of here. Them same jakes, there were jakes that were brought into Carthage. Well, let me I gotta pull it. I gotta pull this. Pull it up over here. Here we go. These same jakes were in Carthage, working here in the fields in Carthage in captivity. Here's another one here. This is another image here of jakes working in the fields there in Carthage in captivity. There in North Africa. Here's another image here. We blow it up some. They're here working here in the agricultural fields in Carthage, getting goods to be sent back to Rome to feed the empire, because Rome used Carthage to feed them. Now there's a thing that I want to read here, because we read about 70 AD and about so I want to show this lecture that was done by this Jake named John Hendrick Clark, right? Because we're talking about Deuteronomy 28:68. Thou shalt see it no more again, right? And there you shall be sold to your enemies as bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. So let me just jump up to about this point right here in the lecture with this guy, Hendrick. Let me see if this is it.
A.D. Now,
the volume is kind of low.
number of people, because the only semi-European.
Okay, let me
We have been the true believers. Now, after the Romans destroyed the last
hold up.
of the people of the Hebrew faith, 70 A.D.
Listen up.
Now you got to watch it. You've got to study the migration patterns of the world. Where did those Western Asian people go? I see no migration pattern that took them into Europe. I do see a migration pattern that took a large number of them into inner West Africa. For a large number of people of the Hebrew faith lived in ancient Ghana, lived in peace up until 770 AD.
So now this guy is saying that you see a migrational pattern of Jakes after 70 AD going into Africa and going into what? West Africa. So now let's go back to Deuteronomy 28:68. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships by the way whereof I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. Now we came over to America on what? Cargo slave ships.
Yep.
He himself, he's a scholar. He said, look, after 70 AD, you see a migrational pattern of the Jews coming in Africa and going to West Africa. Where did we come from? We came from West Africa. Across here to America.
Fort Judah, Fort Benjamin.
You had over there on the Ivory Coast, Sierra Leone, you had Fort Judah, Fort Benjamin, Fort Levi.
Yep.
There on the Ivory Coast, all up and down the Ivory Coast, even the Congo, that's part of the Ivory Coast.
Was that King Judah?
You had the kingdom of Wahida, which was right there, which was in what was known as the Republic of Benin. The kingdom of Wahida was right there, which is another way of saying Yahweh, the kingdom of Wahida. So this guy, Vocab, you're the devil that the Bible speaks of, and you are a small hat, by the way.
Yep.
You're one of them small hats, and you're the devil that the Bible speaks of. You got anything to say, Elder Ayathan?
Little kites.
He's one of them small hats.
Ashkenazi. Even Esau coming out and said, look, they call them the Ashkenazi.
Right.
And they'll quote Revelations 2:9 and 3:9.
Yep.
Esau, the scholars, say, nah, these ain't the real people.
Yeah.
Look at their flavor.
That's
Look
right.
at them. And they worship they read the Talmud. They do all kind of heathenistic, backward shit, sucking the foreskins off their children.
Yep.
You know, not laying a towel down when they have sex with their wife.
Yep.
All kind of weird shit.
Yeah, all kind of weirdo shit. Matter of fact, let's read about him. Revelations 2 and 9. I know thy works in tribulation and poverty, but thou art rich.
Now, that's the most impoverished people is the so-called Negroes.
That's right.
You got them. Everybody talk shit about the Negroes. Here it is. The whole world of our talent, our soul, our food, our fashion runs the whole world. Even that the so-called the little hat people, the big nose little hat people, are selling the merchandise off of our flavor.
Right.
They'll tell our people that we're the dumbest, you're the stupidest, you're insignificant. But actually, if we was gone, this whole world would be in chaos.
Right. You so-called small hats. You're a parasitic race. The entire music industry, you suck the blood out of Israelites. It's Israelites that are the top sellers and the ones that's making the music, and you paying them what? You paying them 8 cents a record.
Oh no, you got
or less than that. No, you paying them less than that. A point on an album is 8 cents. So if they say you're getting 5 points on the album, that's 40 cents. So you're getting 40 cents. You're getting 40 cents off of every record sold.
Well, even think about it. You had the Nori, the one who's the host of the Drink Champs.
Mm-hmm.
He was bringing out. He said, "Look, this rap thing wasn't made for us to win." He's a rapper.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "If you come up with the first album, they might give you 800,000. If you don't recoup that, but you're still making a little buzz, they'll give you another advance of 1.2
mm-hmm.
and have you a $2 million debt. And if you don't recoup that, you got to pay that on top of the interest on that."
Oh shit!
That's why you always talk about. Did you recoup that? Did you
right.
make
Did
that?
you recoup
they
that?
give
Right.
you enough money to start off. You got to pay your producer. You got to buy an apartment. You got to live.
Mm-hmm.
You got to pay for the videos, the flights.
Yep.
So it's all a racket.
Right. It's all a racket, and they run it.
The deal is that they advance you some money, but you got to make it back. The majority of them don't even make it. Now they got a thing called the 360 deals that the so-called Jew has put out there.
Yep.
Where they own your likeness and everything that you do, they get a percentage of.
Because a lot of Jakes started making money selling T-shirts and selling merch that has nothing to do with the record label, and made money off of that, and they were able to sustain themselves off of doing the concerts and selling merch and doing appearances. The 360 deal, all of that's included. Your likeness, any merch that you make, even movies. Even concerts that you do, that's supposed to all go in your pocket. They get a piece of that too. That's the 360 deal. That's what the devil, the so-called Jew, came up with. So they run and they control everything. The real Israelites, like the scripture says, I know thy works in tribulation, the hell that we're catching, and poverty, but thou art rich. Why? Because the kingdom is for us.
Rich in faith.
We're rich in faith. It says, and I know the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. Which is talking about who? Them so-called Jews. I know the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan.
That's right.
And that's them so-called Jews.
They're the richest people. The Lord said his people will be impoverished. So you, like the scripture say, 1 John 4:1, try the spirit by the spirit.
That's right.
And then you had these precepts got lined up to what's going on. Make full proof of that ministry and prove all things.
And it says, Revelation 3:9, behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not.
And they are the chief house of Satan. They run everything.
That's right.
They was the most oppressed people and put down and caught the most hell. How do they own everything?
Right.
And then talk about the so-called slave trade. There's only one people in the United States that had control over the slave trade on their holidays that this whole slave trade was shut down.
And that was the so-called Jew.
Yep.
During slavery, the auction blocks was closed on Jewish holidays.
Just like now, the so-called school systems are shut down on Jewish holidays because they run the world. Job 9:24.
Right.
Well, the stock market is shut down. The Negroes was a stock market.
That's
That
right.
was the auction block. So, yeah.
Hey, on Wall Street, they said they still got the prisons or storehouses where they used to keep the Negroes, and they had GAD on the trading blocks.
Look at that.
Because you had the old timers in the old country that never got to see the other tribes. They wanted to see Gad, Reuben, Asher, Naphtali. So when they were catching them over here, they would send them over there to Europe.
Hey, well, I mean, No Cab is trying his best.
Yeah.
He's trying his best.
He's doing his best. He's trying not to get fired. He's got to keep his job. But I got some real quick. Taz, you ever heard of John Wesley?
No, I never heard of him, but go ahead and get down.
All right, so I'm just share a little something real quick. I'm not going to read this whole thing, but John Wesley, when you read into the zoo, he could have been a Jake, man, because he had a lot of inventions. But this guy, John Wesley was an English cleric, theologian, and evangelist who was a leader of the revival movement within the Church of England known as Methodism. So he's the one that made the Methodist Church. He's the one that made it widespread the way it is now. The societies he founded became the dominant form of the independent Methodist movement that continues to this day. Now, this guy was an advocate against slavery. And this guy was, there he goes, born in 1703 and died in 1791. Now, he wrote this book. It's called Thoughts Upon Slavery. And in his book, basically, he was shutting down all the myths about Jake because they would say, basically, they made it sound like slavery was a favor that they did to Jake because Jake was such a monstrous nation and so barbaric with no culture that they had to save him. Slavery was actually a mercy for them, right?
Blessing for it. It says a blessing that symbolized them.
Right.
That's what they said.
When it's actually in actuality the other way around. So I'm just going to some points he made, right? So he says, this is a good thing for you to read. But he says in part 2, such is the nature of slavery, such the beginning of Negro slavery in America. But some may desire to know what kind of country it is from which the Negroes are brought. What sort of men, of what temper and behavior are they in their own country, and in what manner they are generally procured, carried to, and treated in America, right? He has a picture of a slave ship from the 19th century right here on the left. Number one here says, and first, what kind of country is that from whence they are brought? So where do they go grab these Jakes from and bring them to America? It is so remarkably horrid, dreary, and barren that it is a kindness to deliver them out of it is a question. He's saying, were they in such of a dreary and barren, such a barbaric state that Esau had to go and deliver them out of their own land? And he's telling me he's going into West Africa. It says, I believe many have been apprehended so, but it is an entire mistake. If we may have give credit to those who have lived many years therein and could have no motive to misrepresent it. That part of Africa whence the Negroes are brought, commonly known by the name of Guinea, extends along the coast in the whole between 3,000 and 4,000 miles from the river Senegal, 17 degrees north of line, to Cape Sierra Leone. So these are all areas where Jake is at right now, West Africa.
Right.
It contains 700 miles. Then it runs eastward about 1,500 miles, including the Grain Coast, the Ivory Coast, the Gold Coast, and the Slave Coast within a large kingdom of Benin From thence it runs southward above 1,200 miles and contains the kingdoms of Congo and Angola. So he's going into technicals.
Right. So
right?
that's all West Africa.
All West Africa.
In the Congo, there's Jake in Angola.
Nigeria, all over.
Nigeria is more up north.
Yep. So see, this is what you got to do, man. You got to go. Vocab and all these guys put out misinformation. All you got to do, man, is you got to go and find like eyewitness accounts, autobiographies, biographies. All Spaniards and different guys that lived back in those times, they wrote autobiographies about what was actually going on
And what they seen.
That's why that movie Goodbye Uncle Tom, that was a lot of manifestos that was written.
Right.
That they was
exactly
reading out of.
And you can't get around those. This is why Esau wants to do away with books, right? Because it has eyewitness accounts of things. So it says, concerning the first, Senegal coast, Monsieur Brou, who lived there 16 years, after describing its fruitfulness near the sea, says, the farther you go from the sea, the more fruitful and well improved is the country, and abounding in pulse. Now, when you go back to the book of Daniel, what did he eat when King Nebuchadnezzar offered meat to eat when he was locked up? He said, nah, give me pulse instead. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And it says, abounding in pulse, Indian corn, and various fruits. Here are vast meadows which feed large herds of great and small cattle, and the villages which lie thick show the country is well peopled. And again, I was surprised to see the land so well cultivated. And basically, man, he goes down and he talks about how Jake was flourishing. Then he goes about the manner of the people, because they try to say they were brute beasts. So he goes into how Jake they were well-mannered and they were kind. And anytime a slave came and captured one of the brethren, they basically formed a coalition and one that got the slave. So he's basically debunking with eyewitness accounts everything that Esau lied about.
Right.
But we could go into this in another lesson, but the main point was to bring more evidence that Deuteronomy 28:68 is talking about the ships that went to West Africa and grabbed up Jake that was there and brought him over here to America. Now, if I could read go back to Jeremiah 17:4 again.
Right, go ahead.
Hey, before you read that, add something to you. With everything you bringing out, how Jake kept up the land, the agriculture, and the cities was beautiful. You know, RT News every Thanksgiving, or they had one for Thanksgiving, was talking about they had the manifestos for the Pilgrims of Puritan.
Right.
They said when they came over here with Gad and Reuben, said that they had aqueducts, the cities were swept and was immaculate.
Yep.
Now you did have some savage people like Apocalypto,
right?
That when they was on a sun god worship and doing some foul shit, but they said their cities were immaculate.
Yeah.
And plus, it prophesied that Israel was going to take their sons, sacrifice their sons and daughters.
Yep.
Israel was doing that.
Oh, yeah. Matter of fact, in the scriptures is I forgot who it was, but he built an aqueduct. It's in the scriptures. But the northern tribes were known for their structures and for their architect. Yep. And you're right, Eldar. Even the Spaniards, they spoke about, you talking about the Apocalypto, but even them, man, they had aqueducts, they had floating gardens, right?
Yep.
They had floating gardens, they had streets. Like when you go to expensive neighborhoods like Miami, them expensive roads, when you drive down the roads or even like expensive malls, they have in the aisles, they have plants, floating gardens in the middle of the aisles and in the middle of the streets. Well, they got that from Israel because Issachar had that. Back in the Apocalypto days, they had floating gardens. Now they got hydroponic plants. Issachar invented hydroponic plants, and they had the hanging gardens and all that stuff. That was all Jake, Now Jeremiah 17:4 says this, right? And thou, even thyself, shall discontinue from thine heritage that I gave thee, and I will cause thee to serve thine enemies and the land which thou knowest not. So that's the main point. So Bishop Taz, he was going into how, in 3rd Maccabees, he brought out that history about, which is fictitious, but he's trying to say that they brought some jakes back into Egypt. So that disproves what we say about Deuteronomy 28.
Right.
Well, right here you could compound it. Right here it says that we're going to be brought to serve in a land that we know not. So we've been to the land of Egypt before. We've been to all those lands, but here in America, that's a land. When they went to West Africa and bought Judah, Benjamin, Levi, they never been to the Americas.
God, remember this was called the New World, the uncharted land or whatever. You know, now you had like the Vikings, Hiram Abiff and all them guys that they would come over here grabbing cedar trees, and they said an account to bring it back to Solomon. But nobody ever dwelt over here or inhabited this place.
This was the land where mankind never dwelt.
That's
they
why
came over here to get goods to bring back to Jerusalem.
And this is a land where we completely lost our heritage here in America. Because even when the slave ships went to West Africa, they knew they were Israelites. You had the forts with Israelite names. And then that account that I was reading earlier with John Wesley, he's going into their mannerisms and their customs and their feasts, and there were Israelite feasts. So that's why when you go to the book of Revelation 11 chapter, he speaks about how in the land as spiritually known as Sodom and Egypt, that Israel was going to return back to the nationality, and they were going to stand up with great fear. That never happened before that time. So you bring all these things out, man. I mean, there's no way around it. So vocab is out there to blind whoever is meant to be blinded, because like you said, the scriptures say that the elect have attained it, but the rest were blinded.
Right.
So he's doing the Lord's work, which is cool, but he's not going to deceive the elect.
No, the Lord said if it were possible, they would deceive the very elect.
God.
If.
Hey, GMS Hawaii, what link are you talking about to send?
Oh, this one with John Wesley?
About I think either is it John Wesley or about the aqueduct. He was saying, I think that's what he was looking for. You're saying it in the thing to put the link in there for you. What link is it that you're looking for, brother? GMS Hawaii.
The scripture also say if our gospel be hid, it's because the God of this world has blinded them. Those Jesuits, Illuminati, high priests, whatever you want to call them, they all working together with whatever name they use.
Of course.
But to deceive the masses.
Oh, the John Wesley. Okay, you put it up in there. Okay, yeah, that's what he wanted, the John Wesley. He put it in there for you, brother. He put the link in there for you. If you click on it right now, it'll pop up on your screen and you can go follow it. GMS White. Yeah, so I mean, so we pretty much busted up that vocab Malone bullshit.
Yeah, through spirit, bro. I can tell you how about you, man. You got anything to add, Bishop Inap or Elder Ayathan? Bishop Ayathan? That's it. Hey, man. Said, hey, that you know, the truth will set you free.
Yep.
You know,
the truth, and the truth shall set you free.
Okay, no lies of the truth.
Right. Know? And well, hey, and about them, and about the small hats, right? And in Deuteronomy 28, 43 and 44, it says, the stranger that is within thee shall get up above thee very high, and thou shalt come down very low. Them small hats, they're above everybody.
The East Indian Dutch, the West Indian Dutch, those were
those companies that they set up. The East India Dutch Company, West India Dutch Company, they set up, which was basically that was all dealing with slavery. The money was going to the so-called Jew.
And that's why over here in Newport, Rhode Island, you got the Toro Synagogue, the oldest synagogue in America, is over there established because that's where they started the slave routes, you know, from. They was going over there to Newport, Rhode Island was a heavy slave trading port. And now that they got historians, when you go to the dock, that you go use your phone, how you pull up a menu,
right, and
then pull up the history and how they were bringing in the slaves through that Newport, Rhode Island.
And Newport, Rhode Island over there, that's where they were running rum and wine. How the scriptures say they have given a girl for a barrel of wine, right? A harlot for a barrel of wine. So that was coming from here, from Newport, Rhode Island, where these so-called Jews were trading wine or rum for a girl or for a boy. Like it says in Joel, he has given it said wine for a girl or wine they said a harlot.
It made a boy a harlot.
Right.
Made a boy a harlot. It was selling boys.
Yep.
You know, some little Jake boys. They show you that in Goodbye Uncle Tom. That's one of the heaviest slave movies. After that, that's why I said if you was an Uncle Tom, it would be Goodbye
Uncle Tom, because there's no way you could be an Uncle Tom after seeing that movie Goodbye Uncle Tom. Now Deuteronomy 28:44. He shall lend to thee, and thou shalt not lend to him. He shall be the head, and thou shalt be the tail. Who runs all the banks? When you go to get a loan, you got to deal with these so-called Jewish bankers.
Weinberger, Epstein,
Bear Stearns.
Yep.
They have the mortgage. They're the mortgage lenders.
Yeah.
And they move the stock market.
Right.
They're the ones that move the stock market. They own the stock market. They're the ones that causing the stock market to crash. They got the money to make that shit crash and to survive the crash.
That's right.
Yep. So pretty much, I mean, you know, we pretty much, it's long and it was tedious, but.
Oh, hey, just another footnote about the so-called Jew. They run all the football NBA teams. You had, what's his name? Damon Dash. He said he tried to purchase the LA Raiders. He said the white boys wouldn't let him in. It's not about the money. Right. It's about whites, quote unquote, white supremacy. The good old boy club, like Stephen A. Jackson say, Stephen Smith from what's that? First Take.
Yeah, it's the good old boys club. That's what it is.
Yeah. Amalek ain't letting you in there. It ain't about the money. That's why Bill Cosby couldn't buy NBC.
Right. Because he tried to buy NBC, and the first time he tried to buy it, his son Enos was killed after that.
Yep. Then
he tried to buy it again. These fucking allegations from these women, they threw that up, and that was all thrown up to offset what was going on with the Pizzagate and the Jeffrey Epstein thing. They threw the Bill Cosby thing up there on TV. They went after him, violated his rights, and then they did the Surviving R. Kelly thing. Then they threw Michael Jackson up in there, and then COVID hit on top of that. And the C-19 hit. That's all to block everybody because nobody was looking into Jeffrey Epstein and Pizzagate no more.
Nope. Hardly even hear about it.
You don't even hear about it now. They totally blocked all that with Bill Cosby, R. Kelly, C-19, and what's the other one? What's the other one I had mentioned? Bill Cosby, R. Kelly, C-19. Oh, and then Michael Jackson. They threw Oprah, that bitch, she did the Michael Jackson documentary and threw that out there. All of that was put out there with the C-19 right when they was getting ready to do the investigation into Jeffrey Epstein and all that. And Hillary Clinton was a part of that, Pizzagate and all that.
Podesta, all of them. Remember that ping pong pizza?
Mm-hmm.
And the news reporter who really reported and broke it down on them, they fired him.
Yep. Oh, and the Harvey Weinstein thing too was back then. That all got pushed to the side. The Harvey Weinstein with the allegations with the different women. Even Ashley Judd came out and was like, yeah, he did it. He got me too.
Yeah. Amalek.
Yep.
Damn. Scamalek.
Yeah.
Yep.
Scamalek.
Yeah. That'd be it. And Biden was in the midst of all that.
Right.
Biden was in there. They got Biden touching
Creepy Joe.
Yeah, that's the nickname. And they got him touching up all them little girls all over the place.
Yep.
Now you can't hardly find that footage on YouTube no more.
Mm.
You know,
they
spearheaded it before Biden. We even thought he was even gonna be in the presidency.
It was all up there.
The spearheaded where we did shows and put his footage in there. Yep. Now you can't even put it on there. You can't even hardly find it.
Yeah, because they wiped it off.
Yep.
So so we hope that you brothers and sisters, a few sisters that might have been on the comment board, that you were edified. And I'd like to give all honor, glory, and praise to Yahweh, by Hashem, Yahweh Shai, by Hashem Rakakodash, and say shalom to the next one.
Shalom.